A lot of people have the same plan when it comes to buying a home. They say, I'm just going to wait for the housing crash. Once prices come down, then I'll buy. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. Why buy now if everything is going to be cheaper later? The problem is that housing doesn't actually work like that for most of the time. Waiting for a crash rarely plays out the way people expect, not because prices never fall, but because of how housing markets behave in the real world. When people talk about a housing crash, they usually mean something very specific. They're not talking about prices growing more slowly or even flattening out. They're talking about a big, obvious drop. 20 to 30% drops where it suddenly feels like everything is on sale. Those kind of nationwide crashes are actually pretty rare. The one everyone remembers in 2008, that wasn't a normal housing cycle. That was a credit collapse where bad loans, forced selling, and foreclosures flooded the market all at once. Most housing downturns don't look like that. Instead of crashing, the market usually just slows down. Prices stop rising, sales fall, homes sit on the market longer, but prices don't suddenly collapse. And that's because housing doesn't adjust the same way stocks do. If stocks drop, people can sell instantly. Housing is different. It's slow, emotional, and most sellers don't have to sell right away. If someone bought a house for $600,000 and the market cools and buyers start offering $560,000, a lot of sellers don't say yes. They say, I'll just wait. They might pull the listing, they might rent the house out, or they might just stay and live there. There's a lot of research that shows that sellers hate taking losses. They anchor to the price they paid for and resist selling below it. So instead of prices dropping quickly, what you usually get is fewer sales. That's why you'll often hear people say, nothing is selling, but prices aren't really falling. That's not a contradiction. That's how the housing market works. It works through lower volume, not fast price cuts. Now here's where waiting for a crash really starts to backfire. Most people are waiting for prices to fall, but what actually determines affordability for most buyers isn't the price at all. It's the monthly payment. If mortgage rates rise while you're waiting, your buying power can shrink faster than prices fall. So you can be right that prices soften and still be worse off. For example, imagine prices fall 10%, but rates rise enough that your monthly payment stays the same or even goes up. From your perspective, waiting didn't help at all. That's why you'll often see affordability actually get worse even when prices stop rising. And higher rates creates another problem that people don't expect. When rates go up, homeowners who already have low fixed rate mortgages stop moving. If you locked in a 3% rate a few years ago and you want to sell your house and buy another house at 7%, that can dramatically increase your monthly payment, even if the house price is similar or even less. So what do people do? They stay put, they don't move. And that reduces the number of homes for sale. The Federal Reserve has research showing that mortgage rate lock-in explains a huge portion of the drop in homeowner mobility when rates rose recently. In simple terms, higher rates don't just reduce demand, they also reduce supply. So you end up with this standoff. Buyers say, monthly payments are too high, I'm waiting, and sellers say, I'm not going to cut my price, I'm waiting. So what happens? Inventory stays tight, sales slow down, and prices move very slowly. That's not a crash, that's gridlock. And even in the cases where a real crash does happen, there's another problem people don't talk about enough. The conditions that create a crash are usually the same conditions that make buying the hardest. Crashes tend to come with job losses, recessions, a lot of tight credit, and a lot of uncertainty. Banks start to tighten lending. People start to worry about their income. Big purchases feel risky. So the moment people are waiting for often isn't even a comfortable moment to buy. And a lot of people who correctly predicted downturns still didn't buy during them because the crash wasn't just a clearance sale, it was an economic shock. There's also the timing problem. Even if prices start falling, the bottom is almost never obvious in real time. If prices fall 5%, people say it's going lower. If prices fall 10%, they say the real crash hasn't happened yet. But if prices fall 15%, they say I'm not catching a falling knife. So people just keep waiting. And by the time the data confirms that prices bottomed, the market is often already recovering. Housing data itself is lagged. The indexes most people look at are published months later and based on averages, so you don't actually see the bottom while it's happening. Add that to the fact that housing is local. Even if national headlines say prices are down, that doesn't mean that your city is cheaper or your neighborhood or the type of home you're looking for. Housing isn't one market, it's thousands of smaller ones all moving differently. So waiting for the crash assumes that prices fall in your area at the right time while you still qualify and while you're ready to buy. That's a lot of conditions to line up perfectly. Meanwhile, life keeps moving. If you're renting, you're still paying rent, rents can rise, you're still paying for housing one way or another. And that doesn't mean everyone should rush out and buy immediately and do no due diligence. Waiting can actually make sense if it's based on your life, like job stability, cash reserves, or whether you plan to stay long enough. But that's a very different set of circumstances than trying to wait for a crash. Because crashes are rare, they're slow to show up, hard to time, and often come with circumstances that make buying harder, not easier. The better question usually isn't, will prices crash? It's, can I afford the monthly payment comfortably, and will I live here long enough for this to make sense? That's the strategy that works in real life, not trying to time a housing crash.